Got my Christmas tie. It's Christmas red. And my Christmas sweater. Roll it, Ed. It is Christmas Eve. Welcome again to the Clay Young Show here at WBRZ Plus. Got a good one for you tonight, beginning with the superintendent of schools here in East Baton Rouge Parish. Dr. Sito Narcisse is at the desk. First, hey Doc.
Good
Merry
morning.
Christmas to you,
Merry
man.
Christmas. Happy holidays.
Well, you know, it's been an interesting year, to say the least, right?
Absolutely.
You come into the capital city, you take this job, you've got a list of things you want to do. And I want to begin with the most recent announcement as we sit here on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, depending on when you're watching it. Your Pathways program, that is a kind of a dual initiative that will allow high school students to earn college credits for when they graduate, correct?
That is correct.
Tell me about it, and where did it come from?
Yeah, so as you know, most school systems talk about early college models, and one of the things that we wanted to talk about was how to give kids more access. Currently in our system, we have some kids that have more access than others, and we said, well, why not try to do it for all? And also, how do we accelerate for industry-based certifications? I know we talk a lot about the college access portion of it for kids getting more college credit, but it's also getting kids to get more industry-based certifications to go into jobs like in the construction manufacturing field, medical pre-med, transportation logistics, liberal arts business management. And when you go do that, you have kids that can go right into jobs that would be paying, you know, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000. And I think it's a game changer for that. Also, we talk about the more credits kids can get for school, by the time they get to college, parents don't have to pay for it. So, you know, it's not only bringing kids' dreams closer to them, but it's also helping parents to be like, hey, I can take that money to spend it someplace else.
So you've got about 5 different areas: tech, healthcare, construction, manufacturing, and automotive, and then logistics.
Transportation logistics.
Transportation logistics. These are
and technology.
So these are areas of focus. Now, so let's talk about how it works, right? A student is doing a regular course of classes.
Yes.
And they're also able to add in college level courses as well.
That's correct. So in their course sequencing, every child walks in to take a class in a course sequencing. They got to take English, math, social studies, science, those things. And those sequencings happening every single year. What we're doing is we're going to slowly start introducing, beginning in the freshman year, like world geography and world language as dual enrollment or AP courses in every child's schedule. So children will be taking, if they're in an AP classes are a year long, but if they're in a dual enrollment class, it's a semester long. Yeah. So a child can get up to, you know, almost 4 classes of college credit immediately once they pass those classes. And as they move up, we'll increase the amount of opportunities that they have for that. So kids can, if they stay on track in the dual enrollment track, they'll get an associate's degree. If they do adding with AP, they'll get also, you know, get all the credits they need to go to college. And then more importantly, if they also add the industry-based certification, which I'm really excited about, they'll be able to come out and get a job if they choose to, right?
So the biggest thing we've heard from people about this, you had board members who are critical of it, and I want you to give you an opportunity to deal with that. The first thing is, and we've got a couple minutes and we'll take a break, we'll come back. Board members were trying to understand it. Directly, what do you say to people who criticize this as something that forces kids to college when every kid may not be on a path to go to college?
Well, I mean, there's no data that says that a child should not be given more access to work, right? And I think that we in Baton Rouge have to get away from thinking we're going to remediate children to success. You don't want to give kids less, you want to give them more. I mean, we have a pilot right now at Glen Oaks High School, and in that pilot, we have kids who didn't score very high on the LEAP test in 8th grade, and they're passing these courses, right? And so I tell folks, that changes the narrative. Like that data point says it's not true. And more importantly, this has not been done in other places across the country.
It's being done in Caddo, it's being done in Louisiana. Yeah. There are places that are doing it.
They just not done it here yet.
That's interesting that you say that, because we've had the debate here about how kids perform on the standardized tests versus what they do in classes.
Yeah.
And how can a kid fail so miserably on the standardized test but perform so well in the class?
Yeah, that's right.
So what about that?
Well, I mean, when you think about that, the state test is one test at one time, right? Kid has a bad day. There's a lot of ways that a child may not do it. We're trying to, which I credit the board, was to make sure that we can give kids quarterly updates. So we put benchmarks quarterly, unified across the school system, to be able to tell if a child's, how their reading level's doing, how they're doing mathematically.
Okay.
And that gives us much more of clarity on how a child's performance on growth over time is.
We're going to come back and continue our conversation with Dr. Narcisse about the Pathways program. And coming up later on in the show, do's and don'ts for a New Year's Eve party. Oh, I can't wait to get into that one. Stay right where you are. One more segment with Dr. Narcisse talking about the Pathways program that you announced last week. And one of the other criticisms that we've seen from board members and even parents and people in the community is that the kids that are in the system aren't performing. So how can you have the expectation that they're going to exceed with something like this? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a matter of the kids not performing. I think the issue is providing kids with more opportunities, right? And every child, right now in education, children are judged on one test, right? Every state does that. This one test determines whether they can read, not read, and those things. What we've done, which worked with the board on in the strategic plan, was to ensure that we're measuring kids quarterly and quarterly benchmarks across the system, and also making sure that we provide more opportunity. I mean, right now, I'll give you some data concerning the acceleration courses, right? We have about just over 10,000 students in high school. In the 10,000 students we have in high school, about 1,600 plus students that are white students. For black and brown students, we're about 6,900 students, and there's an other category. If you are a white student in our school system, you are in accelerated courses. So about 70% of our white students are in accelerated courses. For minority students, less than 30%, right?
Less than 30%.
Less than 30%. So, and let me also say this too. I think people always see it from color, but even if you're like a poor child, right? Whether you're a poor white kid, poor black kid, poor brown kid, your access is way more limited than if you come from a much more middle class family and up, right? And so I tell folks, it's not a race thing, but it's also a class thing. And so access to me is important that we do that across the system for all families, regardless of who you are.
I think the children have the capacity to succeed, regardless of skin color. Put in the right environment, any child can perform. In poor communities, kids have not always had the opportunity to have the tools to go win when they become adults. That's kind of what I care about. I think that's what people care about. How do you as superintendent make certain that these kids do get the tools and that programs like this will work and help them live their dreams, whether it's in a 4-year or 2-year institution or even just getting a trade and doing something? How do you ensure they can win?
Yeah, the name of the whole entire context is supports, right? We've been working when we started this plan, I mean, this came about 10 months ago. We've been talking with Baton Rouge Community College. We had representatives from LSU, representatives from Southern, all our post-secondary institutions and industry-based folks we've been working on, and talked about what are the type of skills that children need to have in order for them to be able to succeed. And a part of that was a combination of putting intervention supports in, but also providing kids with more exposure, right? Exposure into companies, organizations, exposure into higher level courses. All of those things are a combination of that. And when we started that, we looked at, that's why we piloted Glen Oaks. We said, if we can do it at Glen Oaks, we can do it anywhere. And when we started to see that acceleration, then we said, hey, what does this look like it's for every child? And what I tell folks is it's a matter of us providing more, right? And a part of where we need to be, in my perspective, is trying to move us ahead in that space where more options is okay. I mean, Adam Knapp shared at the Barron era, at our Bright Future meeting, that, they've been waiting 20 years. We're about 20 years behind when they wanted to kind of accelerate around industry certifications, also giving kids more opportunities in those things. And I told folks, we don't have to wait another 20 years. We can do that now. And I think it's important that we do something different and new, right? We don't have to do the same thing. What's the definition of insanity? You can't do the same thing over and over and expect different results.
How can people learn more about the Pathways program and judge for themselves what it is?
Yeah, they can go to our website, www.ebrschools.org. There's a link there that says Pathways of Bright Future. Click on that link, and in that link, you'll be able to get everything you need. We're also going to be going out in January with various presidents, BRCC, Commissioner of Regions, and different folks. We're going to be doing some infomercials, five infomercials around the city.
All right. Listen, we'll get you back in January. Take
Absolutely.
a drink of that water.
Let's
talk about holiday parties when we get back. Well, it is the holiday season, and people are having gatherings at their house or in their offices. And we wanted to talk about parties and then get into New Year's. That's next week, and you're going to be popping champagne. You need to do it right, right? So we got Mitch Rodgers and David Jimenez from Ben 77 Bistro in Solera here in Baton Rouge. What's going on, guys?
Nothing much. Happy to be here.
So we were talking about parties and do's and don'ts, and you gave me one of them yesterday, which I thought was hilarious because it's so true. So things that people should think about if they're going to a Christmas party or New Year's party or they're having one. Give me a couple of them.
Absolutely. Well, we'll start out with just attendance or punctuality kind of thing. I think one do please RSVP. Let people know you're coming. They can get an accurate head count so you can get the appropriate amount of bottles of champagne for everybody.
Right.
Certainly.
And then the don't is?
The don't surrounding that, don't arrive early. It could really bust up your host.
Listen, when you sent me that, I was thinking, that's so perfect.
Absolutely.
Because if you have a party scheduled for 7 o'clock and somebody shows up at 6:30, it could be awkward. If you got last minute preparation and everything going on, and that's interesting. When you're planning a party and you got people coming to your home or to your business, are there things that you think about as the host that you have to do?
Certainly. I think you got to get everything prepared. You got to think about every fork and napkin or tissue that you might need for everybody or seat and all those kind of accommodations. But, and that's why you need that extra little bit of time. You might forget about where you have to finish those cookies and other kind of thing.
Right. So give me another don't for a party if you're having.
I would say another don't, and this one is to read the room when it comes to the level of partying. We host a lot of, parties and that kind of thing. So I would say read the room. It's perfectly good to get irreverent and have a great time if that's what your host is, or the vibe that your host is giving out.
In other words, don't get Cooter Brown drunk if you're at a
That's
party.
right. That's one way to put it.
Too fast.
A little bit too fast. Read the room. So if you are at a company party, which those things are often uncomfortable because you don't really know if you're supposed to be really social or still keep it professional because you're around colleagues. Do you have any advice for people going with coworkers?
Yeah, I'd say usually wait to make your move. You don't necessarily want to be the first one to pour the tequila shots, but I think to kind of hang out with everybody, you want to be with the host, certainly say hello to everybody, say your goodbyes to everybody, be social. I would say, don't be a party pooper. If your host has some kind of game where you're trying to mingle, a nice icebreaker, where there's maybe some people from a different office department that you're trying to get together, try to play along, even though they might be a little corny. It's going to be fun in the end.
What do you say, Dave? Any pet peeves about parties and people showing up and, like Mitch said, too early or anything? Anything on that score as well?
He pretty much hit the nail on the head with that one. Showing up, even if it's 30 minutes early, you don't think about it, but it can really stress you out a little bit, especially when it comes to work. I mean, there's so much things that you want, and us trying to be as perfect as we can when it comes to hosting parties. Any little thing, someone's walking in, where can I put this? Well, I'm still putting my stuff together. Hold on.
That's right. So what's the worst thing to forget if you're hosting a party? I mean, obviously you're going to have the food and beverages, whatever. But what's the worst thing to forget?
Gosh, I mean, I don't know.
I'll help him out. I would say music is much overlooked.
Music.
Even like that background noise, I mean, it's such a big deal. Even daily in a restaurant, I mean, when you don't have music, you realize how awkward it is.
Right.
And at Christmas party, I mean, I hosted one last night, so I think I can attest to this. A little bit of some jingle bells in the background helped out when it was awkwardly quiet. So
do you go for something neutral, or what do you go for when you're doing, especially holiday music?
I think a nice mix. You start out, you got to have a classic, but then you can't just have Old Holy Night all night. So it kind of things.
So how long is too long to keep the party going?
Well, that's I think 2 to 3 hours is a good time for a lot of parties. That gives you enough time to get a little bit of food and maybe get 1 or 2 beverages, and then you can kind of make your way around the party. I think once you get to 5 hours, you're asking for trouble, maybe.
Ooh, I really got to like people to spend that kind of time with.
There you go.
I mean, I'm trying not to invite Mel to the house for a party here. So when we come back, we're going to talk about New Year's Eve, and you guys have an assortment of beverages and some treats over there on the other side of the set, and we're going to kind of talk through what that looks like. Anything special happening for New Year's Eve at Solera and Ben 77?
We're running a nice just little dinner shift like we normally do. I think it's just a time for everybody to come in, and then we do a real great service. We'll have a nice nice kind of steak and surf
Man,
and
that
turf
steak is
option.
amazing.
You know, we want to have something with a little gusto to it, and then everybody kind of goes on their way and watch
Get
the
'em out of there.
fireworks wherever you're at.
And then what about Solera? Anything? I got 20 seconds. We'll come back and we'll move to the set. Anything special happening at Solera?
Yeah, so we're going to be running a bunch of, a few tapas specials, if you will. And then, of course, you got to showcase our bubbles. So we'll probably do a couple bottle features, maybe some by the glass bubbles. And, you got to have some good cava in Spanish restaurant.
Speaking of bubbles, we're going to come back and talk just about that. Stay right where you are. So, Mitch and Dave are back talking about holiday parties. New Year's Eve and New Year's Day are both on the way, and you guys have a pretty festive looking setup going on here. What am I looking at?
Absolutely. Well, we kind of focused on some wines that are associated with the holidays.
Yeah.
Bubbles, certainly with New Year's. I mean,
Right.
everybody thinks about popping, a cork whenever the ball drops,
Yeah.
all that great stuff.
Yeah.
And we have a nice array here of, classic French champagne and some domestic stuff, which could be a little bit more of a value for a lot of shoppers.
Is there a difference between champagne and sparkling wine?
Absolutely.
But tell me.
Yeah, so champagne, you can only call wine champagne if it's made in the Champagne region in France.
Okay.
Otherwise, in California, you'll see the label like this one. It'll say sparkling wine.
Okay.
Meaning that it's champagne essentially, but just not made in, maybe in the same exact style or in that region as well.
So what would you advise someone to think about if they're choosing either a champagne or a sparkling wine with whatever they're serving at the party?
Absolutely. So, when in doubt, we have a saying at the restaurant, when in doubt, go with bubbles. If you're worried about something pairing or not pairing, bubbles pairs with almost everything,
Okay.
even steak.
Right.
And I've tried it before. It does work.
With steak?
With steak.
Really now?
With
Oh,
steak.
you just
need
gave me
something
some
with a little more.
homework.
Yeah. You might just need something with a little more body. But because of that tartness that you get from wine, because of the bubbles that kind of cleanse your palate, it's great with a lot of food because it keeps your palate wanting the next bite of food, the next bite of brie or cheese or whatever you're serving at the party.
Well, the danger is if, this stuff is sweet, some of it. So if you go at it too fast, you can commit one of those party fouls that Mitch was talking about a little while ago, right?
Yes, sir.
So, and then the other thing is for people who are doing like full sit-down meals, obviously you probably wouldn't go in this direction. Where else would you go?
So, well, I think you just start with a natural progression and make your way, go from lightest to heaviest.
Okay.
Bubbles, then go to your, white wine, rosé, and then red wine if you just want to make it that, a nice 4 easy steps on the way up. Trying to flip-flop all around, you kind of, if you're trying to go to heavy red wine
Right.
and then try to taste a delicate white wine, you might not get all the nuances of the white wine necessarily.
That's got
if you
bad
go in
news
that
written
order.
all over it, too.
Yeah.
So what do we have here?
So right here we have our dessert wines and a little dessert that I'll talk about how we'll pair it with. So right here, first one up, this is a Taylor Fladgate. This is a tawny port, tawny kind of referring to the color. It's got this, here I'll pour a little bit while we're doing it, a nice little brownish tone.
Now, port is a fortified wine. isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
So they take the wine and they let it ferment all the way and basically to where it gets, it still has some sweetness, and then they'll add basically a brandy, and then that stops the fermentation process and keeps the wine sweet, so to speak. This one has a lot of nice caramel, brown sugar, a lot of nutty tones. So if you're going to pair a tawny with a dessert, pair it with something caramel.
Yeah.
We've got a little caramel
So
bread pudding here.
You guys should have seen him today putting this together, coming into here. You guys are working like elves. What do you have here, man?
So this is a little rum caramel bread pudding. Inside the bread pudding, they threw a little bit of white chocolate chips and some blueberries just to brighten it up, give it a little more gusto. This is a little just chocolate lava cake, a little ganache in the middle coated. Goes great with a nice ruby or this kind of a more red port. And then over here, this is a brie en croûte. So
Say that one more time.
Brie en croûte, or
that's
it's just
fancy, man.
brie in crust, if
Yeah,
you will. So
yeah.
basically a wheel of
Mel makes
brie.
those all the time.
Yeah, there you go. Wheel of brie wrapped in puff pastry. You throw in the oven. It's a super easy party, something to knock out, a little snack for your guest. But yeah, pop it in the microwave. It's ooey gooey when it comes out. It's
Oh
delicious.
man. So and you were telling me about these. Tell me about these again.
So tawny port here. This is a Sauterne, so from Bordeaux region of France. It's a white wine that they let hang so long that it kind of raisinates, and then finally they make some sweet wine. This is one of my favorites. It goes great with foie gras, salty blue cheese, apple. It's like apple pie in a bottle. It is
Creme brulee.
delicious. Creme brulee as well, yeah.
I got less than a minute. Pour a couple of those for you. And while we're doing that, if somebody wants to learn more about wine, I mean, you're a sommelier. So if someone wants to learn about wine so they can have the knowledge, what would you recommend?
You know, there's a ton of resources out there as far as even just magazines, books. You could search wine courses. You could come to Bin 77 or Solera,
you took a long
and
time to
I'll
get
be
here.
I'll be very happy to walk through some of these wines with you.
Hey, listen, guys, have a fantastic Christmas. Enjoy your holiday, and we will see you next week on the show. Here's to 2022, right, gentlemen?
2022. Cheers.
Have a great one, y'all.
Cheers.